Are you not entertained? Wait,
Wrong.
That's the wrong one. Is there no one else?
Is there no one else? Is there no
one else?
Hector!
Hector!
He says that 9
Jesus
times,
Christ.
by the way.
I'm not gonna lie. I probably would not have come out and be like, "You gotta come in here, buddy. You gotta come in here." I already came out there too many times.
Well, here's the thing. What did he have to gain by going out
His
there?
death?
Absolutely
I was
nothing.
thinking the same thing.
Like, what the
Elysium?
fuck is wrong with you?
I would have been, hey, Larry, Archer Larry, can you just shoot an arrow on
Can you
him?
get it from here? Can you get it
Hit
from here?
him
Does he need to
in
get a little
the
closer?
heel.
Because I can come out a little bit.
Okay, so by the way, nobody had better take my fucking quote. Eddie, I'm talking to you, buddy. I feel like you're gonna.
All right.
Come on, bro.
You and I are going to do the
No, we're
same
always
quote. I
gonna
already
do
know
it.
what you guys are going to do.
This is why I don't do quotes anymore, or ever. Anyway, go for it.
Because you're lazy and you don't have a backup. Welcome to another episode of Season 5 of 3.5 Gentlemen, the podcast, where 3 of the 4 hosts provide a refined and intellectual analysis of movies from our private collections, and one of us tries desperately to keep up. We'll let you decide which host is which, but for now, as always, with me are my gladiators, Jeremiah,
War is young men dying and old men talking, yo.
Eddie,
You will never be lovelier than you are now.
and Brandon.
That's why no one will remember your name. Which, by the way, is the greatest line in the entire fucking movie.
Oh, I don't agree.
Yes.
Oh my god, that's why no one will remember your name because you don't want to go out and fight. That's badass.
Yeah, that was kind of mean to the kid. And the kid,
A little kid.
I like when bitch Paris says to his father, he says, "You know how you love all of Troy, its people and its lands. That's how I love Helen." And then he says the best line of the movie: "We've fought wars for land and for power. Why not one for love?"
I could see you being that Sean growing up. I could see you being that person. I don't
He's
know
my
why.
idol. I want to be Peter
I
O'Toole.
could
You
see
don't
you being
understand.
like
Yeah.
that type of style. Just all of a sudden, just a willy-nilly, like, what does the gods say?
He literally is a fucking hippie in this movie. He's got his shrouds.
Yeah.
His
Oh,
mouth
yeah,
is
dude.
like he has
Yeah.
dropped too much acid in his lifetime, Priam.
Yeah, his son Hector's just like, can we fucking please, like, come on, let's not
oh,
dick around.
you didn't see that whole situation with Hector? It was like, my favorite son, Hector, and here's your brother, Hector's brother.
This is our son Hector. This is our other son, Hector's brother. Go ahead, Eddie.
With season 5, we've been changing things up a bit. We're still picking movies that we think will be fun to talk about, but for this season, we're playing a loose version of 6 Degrees, where each host chooses their film based off the previous one, as long as the movie shares an actor, actress, composer, or like this one, or a director.
As with every review we give, our goal is to answer one simple question: how many drinks does it take to get through the film that we just watched? At the end of the podcast, we'll rate the movie based on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being a perfect film that you can watch stone cold sober, and 5 being sort of the film that makes you feel like you just took an arrow through the hill and pretty much watched your city burn. Well, it wasn't your city, but you
You
just
see where he
burned the whole
took
thing.
the arrow from? That was in his Achilles.
Oh, wait a second. Wait, was that on purpose?
Foreshadowing.
Is that on purpose?
Last week, Brandon brought us In the Line of Fire, starring the wonderful Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich.
Malkovich.
And this week, we have Eddie's pick. Eddie, what movie have we been hiding in a wooden horse and bringing into our podcast this evening?
So stupid.
Like,
Good
so
addition.
no one knows yet? Okay. So I chose 2004's Troy because from the previous movie, Wolfgang Petersen. I like to call him Wolfgang Putt sometimes, but Wolfgang Petersen.
He's on next episode.
Yeah. So I chose the movie because, I was always a fan of the Bronze Age. That's like the 13th
Ooh.
century time.
Where
Yeah.
are you pulling that out from? This is
Bro,
like
this is not
meme
13th
where,
century, though.
It's around the 13th century
Where's
BC.
the-
Yes, it is.
No, what?
Yeah.
That's 13th century AD, but let's not go there.
This is around 13th century
let
BC,
him have it,
guys.
Brandon. Let him
This
have
is around 13th century BC. Sorry, guys. It's the Bronze Age.
The Bronze
down.
Age is 1300 AD. Anyway,
It's the poet age.
I'm gonna fucking take a picture of this and send it to you fucking
Cannot
assholes.
wait.
Right now.
Listen,
Sure.
the Bronze Age might be
Anyway.
the first time that we actually
No,
wrote
I'm
down
very
in
impressed.
English.
Thank you, Sean. But I do like the ancient Greek mythology. I was a big fan of that. So anything that's around ties to that, and anything that's around that lineage of the Greeks, I am a fan of. All the way down to This Is Sparta. Even though I know that some people don't like
Piece of shit
300,
movie.
but yeah, Yeah. Well, you go over there. You tell that to the Spartans.
That's an Oscar, right? That's an Oscar movie right there compared to this one.
Yeah.
Well, what's really funny is if you look at that movie, and you look at Gerard Butler's character, and then you go over to poor Brendan Gleeson, who clearly did not have a workout regimen for this movie.
Different Spartans. It looks like.
Watch your mouth.
I feel like is this where Spartans?
Sparta!
Is this where Spartans lost their little edge?
This is where
we have our wine.
This is where Sparta goes for spaghetti, and they have minced spaghetti.
That was Sparta. This is now Sparta.
We've grown to seed. That's what's happened. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Brandon, take us through the movie.
Before I go into the movie, I need to defend my boy Brendan Gleeson. He's beautiful in this movie. I would run my hands through his luscious locks. Oh God, he's handsome. Yeah. Fuck yeah. He is my type. There we go. Brendan Gleeson, please come on our podcast and let me hug you. That's all I care about.
Wasn't he in Braveheart?
Yeah.
Is he in Braveheart? What the fuck? He is Braveheart.
He was in Braveheart, and his father was in Braveheart.
Well, I mean,
which is also in Troy too, by the way.
I know that. I'm trying to set it up. Maybe somebody picks him for the next movie. I don't know.
Brendan Gleeson was in
Braveheart.
Brendan Gleeson's father was in what?
It's
Braveheart. He was also the Knights Commander in the Night's Watch over in Game of Thrones.
James Cosmos? James Cosmos is Brendan Gleeson's father?
In Braveheart.
No, okay, not in real life.
I got that shit all
God. I'm like,
you literally
what the fuck is going on? My mind is going crazy. I'm like, James Cosmos? I love James Cosmos.
And you are the father.
Yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. It's like Ricky Lake bullshit.
This episode of 3.5 Gentlemen is really changing to Brendan Gleeson's biography fucked up. So here we go. Troy, the movie that we are talking about this evening, tells the story of Homer's epic poem, the Iliad, chronicling the Helen's escape from Menelaus and the Greek war against Troy, led by the power-hungry Agamemnon. However, at the center of this film is the push and pull between two great warriors that would be Achilles, or as Eddie would say, Achilles, and Hector, the Trojan prince.
I never said that.
Now you could.
I never said that.
Could be.
That's from a show. That's not from me, okay?
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I said it.
The Price is Right, or from a...
It was from...
I knew I had it in my head from somewhere. Oh, Sean, that was your story.
Yeah, that's not me.
Okay. This movie is directed, as Eddie said beautifully, by Wolfgang Petersen, and stars Brad Pitt, Eric Bana, Diane Kruger, and Orlando Bloom, along with 3.5 Gentlemen favorite, everybody on 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, Brian Cox.
There
we
Cox.
go.
Brandon
Brian Cox.
Oh, what about Sean Bean?
Okay,
what about
Sean,
Sean Bean and Brendan
I could have used up our entire hour just on the cast.
Oh.
I mean, let's go through the cast.
I mean,
right? It was
you
fantastic.
did forget Peter O'Toole.
And let's not forget, everybody.
Rose
this
Byrne?
also stars Brendan Gleeson's father in real life, but not really. So
James Cosmos.
now,
And also everyone that's in Game of Thrones,
Everybody
pretty
in Game
much.
Yeah.
All right. This movie has earned an IMDb rating of 7.3 out of 10 and has a Rotten Tomato score of 53% with the critics and an audience score of 73%. Sean, do you think that's where it should be?
All right. As with every movie that we review, we try and pair our selection with a drink that we hope will enhance the viewing experience. Ed, take us through the cocktail that we will be enjoying tonight.
Yes, tonight we're going to be enjoying the Trojan Horse Cocktail, brought to us by the spruceeats.com. This is a super simple drink to make. I almost said simple syrup. This is a super simple drink to make. Carries a hidden punch too, just like the Greeks in their war of Troy, in the way they snuck into Troy. How about that? To make this cocktail, pour a Guinness into a half-pint glass. Next, take Coca-Cola and fill the rest with rest of the glass. It looks like that's it. No need to stir. Just sit back and enjoy while you watch the swords clash on the Trojans' beaches. What the hell?
Jesus
Did you just try
Christ,
to put
Eddie.
random words in here?
It made sense.
Just so you know, I'm boycotting this drink because you're not supposed to ever add, as an Irishman, anything to Guinness. So I am
That's how you know.
I'm boycotting this.
That's how you
And
know
you
Homer
can-
over there isn't really
You can throw
Irish.
down with the spruce. You can throw down the spruceeats.com because I looked at that and I said, let's try that.
Before we start here, guys, okay? We needed to actually just raise our glasses and cheers to Sean Bean surviving a fucking war film, because this is the first time he's actually lived throughout a film.
Sean
fucking Bean.
Sean Bean.
Not the villain,
Not
and
dying.
not die.
And not only not the villain, but he's literally the only likable person here. Like, maybe Hector, but god damn it, we love
I agree.
Odysseus.
He's so smart.
I know.
Odysseus.
Thank God Sean Bean survived this movie.
If you know Greek history or Greek literature, then you know that the next 10 years of his life is going to be literally miserable hell, which is chronicled in a fantastic movie called Over the Earth, though. No, we don't.
We don't care about the Odyssey. We just care about Iliad.
So, I think that also I just wanted to mention one more thing here before we get going. I am a huge fan, as Eddie has already said. I like him. I'm a huge fan of Greek mythology, and there are very few really good movies about Greek mythology out there. And I have been this week. I've been scraping the bottom of the barrel. And you know what I watched today? I watched 30 minutes of
What?
Jason and the Argonauts.
That is a fucking great film.
So
that was a great film.
I know we're never going to review that movie, but I believe it's Harryhausen, and he has these skeletons that move on the beaches, and it's from the 60s. I want to say the 50s or 60s. But the movie is absolutely worth a watch. It's worth a watch 100%. And everyone should add that to the repertoire. I know we'll never review it, but I'm just going to make that recommendation out there. Everyone should watch that movie once.
Did you ever watch Clash of Titans, Sean?
The original one?
With Harry Hamlin, I think.
The newer one.
Harry Hamlin?
Lisa Rimling's husband.
Was Sam Wentworth or Wentworth Miller?
No,
Sam?
No, it's not Waterston's.
No. The remake was not that good.
Avatar.
The original is the shit, dude.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So I do want to, before we get into we are getting into it. I guess we've been getting into it for a while.
Sure.
One thing that I'm really frustrated with this movie and this adaptation, and the way that I look at it is it doesn't get into really Greek mythology, is that we really don't have any mythology here. And I think that that's a real disservice to this movie, because if you know the story behind Achilles, you understand that he's basically been blessed so that he cannot die except for one area of his body that's the weakness, and that's his heel. And we don't get into that at all. Now, granted, maybe, what's his name? Wolfgang and everybody was like, people know that already, but the fact that they don't actually address it really, really bothers me. And I don't know if it bothered you guys, because I enjoy mythology. I have taught mythology courses, and at the same time, I feel like this is missing the mythology. It's getting the Greek history, but we're missing the mythology. Jeremy?
No, I agree with you 100%. That's what it's missing, that magic part of it, which I was really hoping that this story was going to be, And I'll even add to the last part in the end. I know we're going right to the end, but Aeneas, right? The person that gets people out of Troy, he's a big part of the story. The reason why Troy actually survives and eventually goes to Italy and becomes the ancestors of Rome. And you're just like, I mean, what the fuck? You're not going to give any more stories to that person right there?
That's the guy that Orlando Bloom gave the sword to?
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's a very important character, that makes the legacy live on and shit, So, I think they try to do so much. And remember, this is like pre-Game of Thrones, series and shit like that. I think they try to do something different. They wanted their own gladiator. That's why Wolfgang Petersen wanted to do this movie, because he actually had a chance to direct it, and just didn't get a chance to fulfill his destiny. I know Christopher Nolan was actually brought first to actually pitch the idea to direct this movie.
Yeah.
Well, it was the best idea. He was like, "No,
it would have been a completely different movie.
It would have been out of order chronologically." We'd be like last, and then beginning, and then middle, and the beginning.
So this movie I took more as like, it was more away from that on purpose, and I almost liked it in a weird way, because Achilles is just a random person, and they've heard stories of him. This is the beginning of him becoming, of his legacy. So I almost like to see through the eyes of normal people of like, hey, this is he's amazing, but truly he's just a guy, he's just another person, but I like the idea of making Achilles the human side of him. I like seeing that. I know in the long run it's a myth, and I know it becomes this, he's like, half God, half human. But I liked it, but made him human personally. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like, the other movie, like I think about it, it's this movie and Immortals. Those are the two I compare. And sometimes if it gets too godlike, like it's like, okay, well, you can't beat him. He's impossible to beat.
Well, so here's my whole problem. I have to agree with Brandon and Jeremiah on this. You have kind of almost, not only did you not embrace the gods and embrace the history of the time, but Achilles is a demigod. Mm-hmm. He's half mortal, half immortal god, and you have someone like Hector who scoffs at his father Priam because Priam is worshiping the god Apollo and trying to use the god's powers against the forces that are attacking his city. And Hector is, I think it's at one point he says, how many legions do they have? Or something like to that effect. You're creating a movie where you're disparaging the existence of gods while a literal demigod in Achilles is attacking your stronghold. So I feel like there's this hypocritical problem with the movie, mm-hmm. Where they're contradicting themselves just in the basis of the storyline.
Yeah. How?
Well,
because Achilles is a demigod, and it's actually
in this movie he's not.
Yes, he is, because he's explored by.
Well, then but no.
It says he's
you're
not.
wrong.
Well, Sean, let me jump on your back real quick, Sean. Let me just do this. So Eddie,
when he meets Julie Christie in the water.
Mm-hmm.
She shows you he's a demigod. She tells you he's a demigod.
That's what she says. And down the road, the teen says, "Hey, I've known you, Dad." I mean, it's this idea.
But even Achilles in the movie, he says his father is Peleus. Peleus is a god.
But why? But here's the thing, Ed. Why put so much focus on the arrow to the heel, which is mythologically the only way that Achilles can be killed, which we don't ever talk about. Like if they had talked about how he was dipped as a baby into the river Styx by his heel, and that's his only vulnerable spot, I think it would be good. And jumping on what Sean was saying, the only mention of a god that I noticed, and I was kind of looking for it, was Apollo, and it was Apollo's temple, and how it was ransacked and how horrible it was.
He also mentions Peleus, is his father. He says, I'm Achilles, son of Peleus. Mm-hmm. And then Julie Christie is supposed to be a nymph, kind of a foreseer of things. Yeah. And she tells of the fall of Achilles based on what you're talking about in the river Styx. He's, mm-hmm. Dipped, and she just does it in kind of a amorphous way that is, I feel like the writer said, all right, we're going to remove anything about actual mythology, mm-hmm. and just make it
about the person.
Gritty, about the person. And I will say this movie screams of studio interference.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say that.
To me, and I have no evidence of this, but to me, I'm watching. It's like they're like, you got Brad fucking Pitt, you've got Orlando Bloom coming off of Lord of the Rings, you got Eric Bana who's up and coming, you've got this great cast. Make this Braveheart, make this about your actors, and do nothing but build up the actors and not the characters.
Well, all of the characters are really, really static. They don't transition. Hector is always a good guy.
The same thing.
He's always a good guy from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. Achilles is a tormented person from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. Paris is a little bitch from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. And you guys always
Helen.
Yeah, well,
I think Helen developed a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. You talk about how
I agree with that.
Eddie, you talk about, character development. I'm obsessed with character development because I think it's so serious. We don't get any character development, and and the problem is it's a movie. And Sean, I think that's what you're saying, is a movie that had so much potential. I mean, so much potential. Mm-hmm. And it just falls short. Just look at the cast itself was just fucking. I mean, you got Brian Cox and you've got Brendan Gleeson.
Thin. It's just thin. You're not invested in the movie like you are in Gladiator, or invested in the character like you are in Braveheart, or are these big epics, right? So you're not like hook, line, and I loved Hector. I thought Hector was a fucking awesome character, but even and I was sad when he died, but I wasn't so involved in the storyline that I was actually emotional about, like the fall of Troy, or nothing gave me anything really to believe in except for a little bit of Achilles because I love Brad Pitt. and then bitch Paris kills him, and it just kind of is anticlimactic.
Yeah,
horrible
Maybe
way
that's
to
what
die.
I mean. Yeah.
Oh, no, I was just gonna agree. Like, I couldn't stand any of the characters. I couldn't get behind any of the characters in Troy, and maybe that's the whole point of the movie. Like there's no one to actually root for in a way. Except for maybe Odysseus. Because I thought they captured him. Perfectly, his intelligence. Him showing how he came up with the idea of the Trojan horse and everything.
Yeah.
But I think this was pre Game of Thrones.
Yes.
If this was David Benoff, opportunity to actually do a series, I think he could have done this amazing,
That's
just
exactly what I
set
was
everything up here and shit. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Before we start, you got to admit the first 10 minutes of the movie is pretty fucking badass. I mean, that's pretty cool way to start the movie, right?
I don't think you can limit it to 10
No, I
minutes.
think
I
it's
think that the movie
throughout.
has
Visually, it's beautiful.
Well, it has a good
glimmers
scene.
of greatness
Yeah.
throughout the entire movie.
But right at the beginning of the movie, where he faces that giant, Brad Pitt,
phenomenal.
dude, that is pretty
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah.
So someone needed to put all of the actors who were not the top billed 3 on a diet. Brian, they all looked bloated and just old, and like they didn't fit in their costumes. And I remember, I'm a huge fan of sandals and sword epics, or sword and sandals epics.
Yeah.
I remember Cleopatra. If you go back and watch that movie, it's an old movie, I get it. But when you look
Richard
at the
Burton.
actors, Richard Burton,
They all
in
look in
his
shape.
armor, he looked like a fucking god. He was Caesar,
Yeah.
and he looked like
Spartacus.
he was something like if you go to Spartacus, go to the 10 Commandments, these people they embodied their characters. There was no gluttony in ancient Troy.
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate real quick. I'm gonna play devil's advocate because I actually like.
It's only because it's Brian Cox.
No, it is. It's Brian Cox and it's Brendan Gleeson. But no, think of it this way, and this is what I think. This is what I think makes it work. Is that you've got this idea that number one, we're supposed to hate Agamemnon and Menelaus, right? They're the bad characters. They're the characters we want to root against, right? We have zero sympathy when either of them
Brian
dies.
Cox and the other one, right?
Yeah, Brendan Gleeson.
And
Yeah.
Brendan Gleeson.
Oh, and here's the thing: is that these are two characters that are, number one, they're slobby. They're sitting on their thrones because both of them are kings in their own rightful realms. They're sitting on their throne. I think it. I'm not saying that it was a choice because I mean, if you look at Brian Cox and you look at Brendan Gleeson, they showed their normal, physical appearance, right? I mean, to say it nicely. And I love both those characters, and this is not to disparage them.
Did you guys like Brian Cox's? I mean, I know everyone, I felt like his storyline lacked personally. I
Yes.
got tired always of him bitching and moaning.
Well, it's the
off the same
problem.
thing, like about Achilles.
There's no character development. He literally is a one-trick pony in this movie. And the problem is you've got actors who have such range. You have actors who have such ability, and you don't give them the stuff. And Jared, I want to just kind of jump off something you said earlier because you kind of stole my thunder in a beautiful way. But I was looking at this, and this is me coming right off of Game of Thrones. I finished Game of Thrones last week, right? Finally finished it. I binged literally 5 seasons within about 2 weeks.
Finished the wrong one first.
Well, listen, we can talk about it. I enjoyed the end, but whatever. David Benioff, right? For those of you guys who don't know, he's the creator of the TV series, right? Off the George R. R. Martin books. He was the screenwriter of Troy, which I think is great because obviously you see a lot of the things going on here. The problem with this movie, and I think the problem with Benioff in general, is that he takes time to develop his characters. He, even throughout season 1, you have no fucking idea who the Stark family really is, right? Of Game of Thrones. And I think that he's a marathon runner. He's not a sprinter. And unfortunately, when you have a script, you have to be a sprinter with your character development.
And this movie particularly is a sprint upon a sprint.
It is a sprint because here's the thing.
Yeah.
This movie is so crowded with different storylines, which works perfectly for a 12 episode season or a 4 season series, but it doesn't work for a 2.5 hour movie.
Yes, I agree with you in part, and I disagree with you in part. I think that this movie suffered from poor casting, and I hate to say this about my boy Brian Cox, but he is not Agamemnon. He should not have been Agamemnon. He should not have been anywhere near this movie. Neither should Brendan Gleeson. Neither should most of the people who were in that movie, particularly because they all had British accents. But
Well, Brad Pitt tried.
He did. What we should have had what we should have had was someone like an Omar Sharif, an older, more. So here's why I don't agree with you necessarily, because Priam, and this is not just my love of Peter O'Toole, Priam brought a sense of peace and stability to Troy. Peter O'Toole brought this every time he was on screen. You felt like Troy was together. They had an army. They had people, like they were organized. And Agamemnon was not organized. They felt chaotic. They felt brutal. A better storyline, someone calmer and more calculating than because Agamemnon was a calculating,
but literally
he united.
But literally,
hold on. He united. Hold on, Brandon. Hold on. He united all of Greece. You don't do that by acting like a petulant little baby, which he acted the whole fucking movie.
He didn't.
Yeah, he did.
All of
he
Greece.
acted like a fucking little
he
cunt.
conquered. He conquered all of Greece. He was a fantastic ruler, and he was a fantastic ruler because of everything that we get from Brian Cox. He's a selfish son of a bitch that doesn't give a shit about anybody but himself. And I think that Brian Cox actually does a good job. Brian, I got your back, buddy. Jeremiah, you want to back me up? I know you do.
I wanted someone that could almost like a teen, like a little bit more of a teen, a little bit more cockier, and I like a George Clooney. I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody who's more like
just Joffrey,
like somebody who's a little bit more like Brian Cox is like, bro, that's not the king, bro. Come on, like let's be real. Like he, like
he's too short.
He's too short, and he's not. Yeah.
Okay. You know what? Why don't we just get Joaquin Phoenix? Fuck it.
I mean, I know this is too.
He's Napoleon.
I guess all I was looking for, Brandon, from that character, especially from those two characters, was a little bit of like, we are way more strong than Troy. We have conquered the known globe. We're essentially Alexander the Great before Alexander the Great. And I did not get that stability and strength from the army. I always felt like they were like the entire army was dependent on Achilles. I felt like and he was such a little bitch. It's like you have this. Brian Cox was such a little bitch. Agamemnon was a bitch because all he had to do for his victory, all he had to do was placate Achilles.
But that is Greek mythology.
And make Achilles important.
That is Greek mythology at its core. Is this idea of hubris and how they have this flaw that destroys them, and it's always pride. It's always this idea of they are too proud to do something, and it causes their downfall. And the only thing that keeps them from having this downfall is what's his name? Achilles' lover.
Odysseus.
No, not Odysseus. What the hell's his name? What the fuck's his name?
I'm so glad that you had that. I'm so glad you added that to it, because that wasn't his cousin. Supposedly that was his lover. That's the reason why he was raged.
Oh yeah,
he wanted to kill Hector.
That was his cousin.
Right? No, just like it. Mythologically, it's his lover.
That was his cousin.
Mythologically, it's his lover.
Garrett Hedlund.
Garrett Hedlund. Yeah, Patroclus. Patroclus is the only reason that they win, right? It's the only reason that Achilles gets brought in, and this is saving Agamemnon's hubris. It really is. And even I forget who was it.
Yes,
Odysseus.
He got a new lover.
Says, Odysseus says, "Well, he just saved the war. He just won the war for us, or whatever."
No,
right?
that was Agamemnon. Agamemnon says that boy just saved our war.
Yeah.
But I will say that from a positive standpoint, this movie was beautiful. It was beautifully shot. The fight scenes were choreographed magnificently.
Oh, they were fucking great.
It's 2004 movie. I did not feel like it was CGI, over CGI'd. I did not actually. I felt like it held up in every aspect. I thought the characters looked good, except for some of the armor of the kings. I thought it was a little cheesy, but like Hector's armor looked great. Achilles' armor looked phenomenal. Brad Pitt was at his just absolute peak of fitness and beauty and all of that shit.
I mean, one of the scenes, we're going back and forth, but going from Hector, when he actually scratched Achilles' armor, you get that idea of Achilles like, oh shit, like that doesn't happen ever. So like this was the first time a human almost, like somebody like, and that's why he gave nod to him in the very end. He's like, hey, your son was like the hardest I've ever fought. So just give you a heads up, like,
And Hector knew he was going to die. That was one of the most beautiful scenes where he turns to his father and he gets on his knees in front of Priam and says, if ever I offended you or whatever he says, is just like, he goes and then he goes to Paris, then he goes to his newborn child, and he goes to his wife, and he's like, he knows he's gonna die, and he's so full of honor.
It's a beautiful
I
moment.
loved that aspect of
Yeah.
him. Right.
Let's put it this way: he knew that he was in deep shit,
And you killed.
and it wasn't fucking.
Damn it!
When
That
he
wasn't
killed Patroclus.
Yeah, you knew he was in this shit. It reminded me like when you were little and you get a call from the school and the teacher's talking to your mom, and you're just like, oh man, I'm so fucked, dude. And he knew that he was so fucking gone. But you guys are talking about like, horrible performances. And I'm saying that his performance was horrible or anything like that. But I read something that Brad Pitt was not a fan of his performance in this movie.
We hated
he
the movie.
He felt like he didn't find the material passionate about. And I read something that the only reason why he joined this movie because he took Sean's advice, like, he was told that he needed to be more in commercial blockbuster films and shit, so that's the reason why.
And he's contractually obligated to do it. Like literally, they threw this script at him and said, "Well, you turned down a previous film for our production company. You get to do this. You get to be Achilles." And I mean, one thing we'll give him is
he turn down.
I wish I knew, but
it was a project that it fell through and shit like that.
Sucks,
it fell through.
yeah. Right, and so
Yeah,
he got
so he was like,
he gets his body
this
jacked.
This
But
film just screams.
he just doesn't.
It just screams of studio interference. It really does.
Mhm.
I feel like the studio really put so much pressure on this film because to me it almost ruined 2 careers because Eric Bana was starting to surge as an actor, and this movie kind of tanked his fucking career.
Well, then he came back with Finding Nemo.
I think Orlando Bloom suffered as well after this movie because I think that he was coming off of
He did Pirates after this.
of Lord of the Rings.
And he went to
what did Eric do
the
after
Kingdom of Heaven after this,
Yeah,
right?
he did.
Kingdom of Heaven after this, and then he did Elizabeth. It took him a while to get Pirates. Like it took him a minute. He should have been Orlando Bloom's career should have been meteoric from Lord of the Rings. It should have been the greatest. He should have been every action movie known to mankind.
I mean, Eric Bana went out to do a lot of good things. He
Star
did
Trek?
Munich. He did Star Trek.
He's had a great career, but I'm just saying it was.
I think it was interesting that Brad Pitt kind of did this role because it kind of brought him to do more commercial movies like Mr. and Mrs. Smith and some of the Ocean 11s and everything like that. But you can tell now he's very connected to visionary projects now and shit. He gets to go to do what he used to do back in the days in the 90s and shit.
Yep.
But
it reminds
it's
me of
seeing Brad Pitt in this movie.
Hashtag assassination of Jesse James.
you got to do some mainstream shit so people can
peak of your
like
career.
you.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, in the 2000s, he definitely he did that. He did some major blockbuster films, but he also did Brandon's favorite film, and also did Babel. He did art movies and stuff like that.
Benjamin Button. I mean, he's done. Yeah, he's definitely done both. But at the same time, I think of Brad Pitt. It's like World War Z. That's not a Brad Pitt vehicle.
Right.
That's not. I mean, that's not a Brad. If I was going to cast that movie, the first person I would come out with is not Brad Pitt, but he was very good at it, and it gave him name recognition. It got him out there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those movies that it's just like, okay, I didn't like it, but truly, I don't think no one else could have played this character for Achilles. I feel like at this time, he is. If I had to think in my head who's the best Achilles person out there, I think Brad Pitt fits the mold at that time for that actor. It was not many people at that time. I feel like could hit that.
Yeah,
hit that
I mean,
point in my
Russell
head.
Crowe only comes to my mind, but that's because of Gladiator. I mean, that's not even fair,
I think if this were an early 90s movie, I could see them making the mistake of casting like in Conan, the Destroyer, Barbarian, or whatever the fuck, somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger who has that kind of godlike physique, but man, at the same time, I think that something like that would have ruined it. So I do like the Brad Pitt casting. I know, Sean, you were going to say something, but I do want to talk about Diane Kruger because this is her first American mainstream film, and it's a small part, but I really feel like she nailed it, right? And she's become kind of this steady, well-received actress from
household
this movie.
name. She's become a household name. One of my criticisms of the movie is they made Helen a victim, and Helen was not a victim. Helen of Troy, she was, or Helen, whatever, however you want to say it.
Helen of Troy, yeah.
She understood what the sacrifice was. She wasn't surprised that Troy went to war over her. She wasn't this a shrinking violet who was going to sacrifice herself. She almost was worthy of the fall of Troy. Like that's how she was portrayed. And to make her the shrinking victim didn't really sit well with me. It did not contribute to the storyline to me.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you on that, because like I couldn't get behind Paris and and Helen during the whole like, I love you and I will battle for you. I hated the relationship. Back in my mind, I'm just like, this is fucking stupid. Like, are you fucking really going to do this? You're going to go to war for him. You're going to take the fucking girl. You're going to fucking do this. Are you fucking kidding me? I was just getting annoyed most of the time.
I was out. You were Hector looking at your brother like, what the fuck are you doing? We just got peace now.
And they ruined. And I don't blame Orlando Bloom, but they ruined Paris as a character because Hector was raised to defend Troy from all assaults. That's what Hector was bred for. Paris was raised, and Priam talks about this in Iliad. He was raised to treat with all the other nations, so that he had the voice and the tongue, and he had the ability to go in and be kind. But Hector had the sword. He could go reach out in peace and spread beauty and art and all the technology Troy had brought to the new world. He could go out and use that as an emissary of Troy, and Hector would stay back and defend the walls. And so Paris wasn't really a bitch. He wasn't raised to fight. Yeah. And you're putting him out there against the leader of Sparta. Who do you think's gonna fucking win? And when he's crawling back to Hector, that's one of my least favorite shots, because it looks like he's just a cunt.
I feel like that's why I think that hurt his career. Like that scene, people are just like, oh, Orlando Bloom doesn't look good in this scene. Like,
it did rub people the wrong way, dude. Like, that's not my fucking lick list.
I got a Jeremiah question. So I'm going to pose this to you guys, which, Jeremiah, I love your questions always. But not necessarily in this movie, but in the greater context of the story. Okay. This idea that Helen was quote unquote, taken or kidnapped or chose to leave, whatever you want to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay. So she leaves, a Greek side to go over to Troy, and Troy defends this leaving, this theft, if we want to call it, of another man's wife. And so which side are you rooting for? Like, are you rooting for the Greeks because they just got done wrong by Paris? Or are you rooting for Troy, who, basically says that love wins? Like, again, in the bigger picture, I'm just wondering which side you are rooting for.
If you really want to know my personal opinion on it, I was rooting for Hector to turn the boat back and drop Helen back and deal with the consequences with his asshole brother and shit, because I just thought, oh my god. But in a way it didn't matter. This was Brian Cox's way to fuck it. This is my way to fucking I'm gonna kill him no matter what. Yeah. Right. This is gonna open the Pandora's box, so it didn't matter and shit.
And that's what I kind of was disappointed in. That's why I ultimately I think that the answer to your question, if you're asking me, Brandon, is I'm Team Troy, because Hector, of all the people on the battlefield, was doing things for the correct reasons. Yeah, and he was honorable, and Agamemnon was as far from honorable as possible, and so was Odysseus. So they were all sneaky little fucks, and the fact that Troy, okay, so yes, they stole Helen, but when I was a little upset with the boys of Troy for doing that and not turning back. But then when Brendan Gleeson's character, who's what's his name?
Menelaus
says, I want her back so that I can kill her with my own two hands. I kind of went, all right, so you fucking shouldn't have had her in the first place.
Yeah, and he was cheating on her too.
And then I'm like, all right, where did you get her? And then I started doing the research. Somewhere. It's like, all right, I'm definitely Team Troy. Paris liberated her. And you know what? I'm sorry, but Orlando Bloom is beautiful. And I would have gone for him over fat lumpy.
Why would you go for the old bull?
Get the young calf.
Go for the young calf.
That's funny. So, Sean, Brandon, what was your question that you asked?
Which side would you root for?
Are you Team Troy? Team Troy, Sparta.
I am on Achilles' side, and that's not my king. Just like Achilles would say, that's not my king, and I'm the side. It almost would have been cool to see Achilles be like bounty hunter. Like, hey, pay me and I'll be on your team. That's
well,
what
he kind of was. I mean, he kind of was.
Yeah.
He was looking. His bounty was fame,
Fortune and glory.
So fortune and glory. Because when I don't mean to harp on Peter O'Toole because he's one of my favorite actors of all time.
I know.
But when Peter O'Toole goes in and talks to Achilles, I mean that's what acting is.
Yes.
In my
That's
opinion,
a good scene, dude.
It's
That's
a
a good
beautiful
scene.
scene. But more than that, Achilles finishes the scene by saying, "You're a much better king than leads this army." And I think it was that moment where he changed his allegiances and went after what he wanted as opposed to sacking.
Well, he
Troy.
returned the body.
Because he went to find the girl, but he also went to find the girl.
He went
in
strictly
Troy
to find her.
To find her. He wasn't killing everyone. He was going to find her.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he wasn't doing it for Agamemnon. He was doing it for himself.
Yeah, there's that one character that you saw that he actually, you can saw a soft spot of Achilles where he let the guy survive. He said, "Don't kill me. I have kids. I have children."
Yeah, that was a big one.
Take your son away from Troy.
Yeah, that was a big one. That showed that like old Achilles was sliced up and diced, and he was just like, "Okay, well then leave Troy now."
Yeah.
My favorite line in this movie is when Peter O'Toole and Brad Pitt are talking, and Brad Pitt goes, "You're still my enemy tomorrow." And he goes, Peter O'Toole goes, "You're my enemy tonight." You know, and I just
but
love
that does not
line.
mean we can't. Yeah, but that does not mean we can't be
Respect.
We have to have respect.
You can't respect your enemies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but go based off of that same scene, Jeremy. You said your favorite line was that in that scene, but my favorite line is what they were talking about is, because Achilles was still pissed off, saying, "Hey, he killed my cousin," and then he's like, "Well, how many cousins did you killed? How many brothers have you killed? How many fathers, and sons and stuff?"
Yeah.
And then it opened up the Achilles' eyes to like, okay, all right, asshole, I get you. I see what you're doing here.
Well, that battle between Hector and Achilles was fucking sick. I mean, come on. That was probably the highlight of the movie, I thought, because you just saw spears versus spears, contact, and things like that. I thought that was the coolest fucking battle scene.
To me, it was hard to watch because I knew it was going to happen.
You knew it was going to happen.
But I remember seeing this in theaters, and literally sitting down and watching this movie and praying that Hector was going to win, and then you
dragged off, bro.
He's gonna get cut.
From the moment, like, God bless America, you're just not gonna win. And because
take his helmet off, like, now you know who I am. Or
now you know
says.
who you're fighting.
Let me ask you something. How many stories is this connected? There's the Iliad, right? And then there's the
shitload.
Is it the Odyssey?
But here's the problem with
but the
Greek
Odyssey
mythology.
So the first one is the Trojan War, which is supposed to take 10 years from my understanding. Is that correct?
Yeah. So 10 years.
And this is like fucking 5 days and 5 nights and shit.
This battle was, in the movie, it was like a 2-week battle, but in real life, it was 10 years.
The Odyssey is Return to the Trojan War,
also 10 years,
and then the Aeneid is the escape from the Then the escape, and then the Aeneid is the escape of the ruin of the Trojan Wars, and how they become the ancestors of Rome or something like that.
Yeah. Well, so you hit 3 of
Romulus and Remus.
Yeah, so you've hit 3 of the major ones, but what we need to understand is that Greek mythology, this war was written about dozens and dozens of times. And so, Homer is really just a name that nobody really thinks that Homer actually existed. But Homer is the one credited with just writing these stories down. So these were all like little bits and parts and pieces. And if you really go into it, there's fragments of the Trojan War told about dozens and dozens of times. And that's not even including things like the historical or the mythological background of Helen and who she is and how she was cursed by Hera and Zeus's, Zeus's part in really Helen's personage, or even, what's his name? Achilles's, patronage or parentage, and you got all this stuff going on. So you hit the 3 major ones that we study in school, but if you really start going into mythology, you're going to be spending a shitload of time just reading these, and some of them are a paragraph long, and some of them are 2 pages long. What you have with the Iliad and the Odyssey and the Aeneid are 3 of the most complete stories that we have. And the Aeneid was written from the Roman side.
Here's the problem with all these stories, is that they lack the depth of an actual story.
Yeah, they are.
So you kind of have what occurred, but you don't have any of why they occurred.
Yeah. So then Achilles it's like a story of someone that possibly had happened in the Trojan War, and it became like, was he like, that's where I'm getting at, is like, was he a person that at one time that was the Achilles, and then he just was a badass fighter? I mean, I'm seeing stories of like, if it was him, he was
do you believe in Greek gods then? Like, I mean,
no,
Ed, I mean, why can't,
I mean, that's the question.
Ed.
Yeah, but let's say he actually was a warrior and he died when he was 30, but he actually was like a badass warrior, and no one, and there was like, now people just
so there's characters that inspired this story, as opposed to like, I think more this is a mythos of I think it's deeper than that. I don't think that there's like a true story behind the character of Achilles. I think that this is a series of fairy tales passed on from generation to generation that culminate in someone finally writing them down, and they called that person Homer.
And here's the thing too, Ed. We don't really even know / we don't think that Helen was really the onslaught of the Greeks, destruction of Troy. Agamemnon was a real king, but
the whole Troy,
all sorts.
The horse, did that really happen?
No.
Oh God, I know that's supposed to be part of it's supposed to be part of the story. That is the most stupidest concept. I know that's part of
let's
like
burn
Homer's
it,
story.
And then we're like, yes, burn it, and then no, let's bring it into the city state.
It's fucking stupid.
Let's put it in the middle of the city.
It's the stupidest fucking thing.
In all fairness, Brandon, that's what you used to do. You used to burn things.
Oh yeah, no, I'm saying we should burn this shit.
That's what you did.
Oh, we should have done that. Why not? Why break from tradition in this one time and let it kill you? I just don't understand it. Listen,
I don't know what it is. Maybe I just didn't do well in like Greek mythology. I was just so frustrated.
If it makes you feel any better,
the
general consensus is that the Trojan horse was made up for the Odyssey, and not even for the Iliad. I don't even think it appears in the Iliad. It's actually mentioned in the Odyssey. So the Trojan horse is all fiction. Really, we can pretty much say that.
So now this makes me want to read these.
Don't
books.
do it.
So
Don't do it.
Have you?
Oh God.
Okay.
I teach these. No, you don't want to do these.
I bought the Homer thing for Hannah. She's like literally, she's all about it.
Listen, if you want to be bored out of your mind,
it's a good read. It's a fun read. I think it's fun, depending on if you enter Greek mythology and like you like the idea of there's just like these fairy tales, like Medusa and shit. But that's
Medusa. Yeah, I mean she's not here.
Hercules and. Yeah, maybe this story needs to be broken down into a TV show.
I agree.
Maybe this needs to be broken down into a good TV show.
A Disney movie.
Oh, that being said, I want to just plug something real fast because it just got renewed for season 2. Coming off this is this Greek mythology. You have a show on Disney Plus called Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Now, it is based on a series of books by Rick Riordan, something like that. And I just got the audibles, and I've read now or listened to 2 of the 5 books, and I've watched the entirety of season 1. And I will say this: they are fun.
Sean, what do you think of my new book that was published?
Of Greek mythology, they are fun. I don't know. Is there an audible audio version?
Is it about Greek mythology? Is it made up?
No, it's a ghost story.
Is there a god in there?
There's a ghost story in there.
Hey, Brandon, just to let you know that I'm glad that you released the book, and just to let you know that George R. Martin still hasn't released the last fucking Game of Thrones book, to finish his fucking thing. So there you go.
That's funny.
That brings us to the end of the review. Now it's time of the podcast where each of the hosts provides a score on the following scale. Hector, he was better. Can you provide the score,
all
please?
Because of a damn rock, bro. He tripped. He was gonna die, but I mean, like, I like how Achilles was like, I'm not gonna let some damn rock ruin my kill.
They better not talk about it.
They did. 0, the perfect movie. You don't need shit to enjoy it. 1, a feel-good first cocktail. 2, a happy buzz. 3, an Uber lifting home. 4, rough morning walk of shame. 5, blackout, shit-faced spring break drunk.
I've got mine written down, guys. I'm ready.
Okay.
All right, here we go.
I got mine.
1, 2, 3.
Sorry, Sean.
Okay. Brandon, Sean, I can't see what you're. What
I can't
what
see.
is
Sean, back up to the go to the right, Sean.
Oh,
okay.
Jesus Christ! I really shit on this one. Okay. Who wants to start?
I'll start. So, for this movie, I kind of balanced a couple of different things. I looked at the year it was, and I looked around it, and I said, was anyone else really doing this? A big budget, a big budget movie coming off that was not necessarily about a historical event, but something that was more mythological. And even though they stripped out a lot of the more mythos parts of it, I think that they opened it up for kind of what would come after. So from that perspective, I think that it was kind of a revitalization of a style of movie, the big operatic big movies of the past. It had a killer soundtrack that was very much stolen from Man in the Iron Mask. Who also not Man in the Iron Mask, excuse me, Mask of Zorro, who was also James Horner. So if you listen to those two scores relatively carefully, you'll find that they're the same.
Is that why you were playing that earlier?
Yeah, it's the same fucking score.
See, that A note became a B note, but it was the same.
It's like Jesus. Like James Horner, rest in peace. But come on, do a little better.
He's like, I got 20 million for it. What do you want me to do?
Josh Groban did the song for this movie, Remember, and I thought that the theme of the movie was very good. As like Brandon said, that's why they won't remember your name. So doing great deeds will put you in the history books. So that's all that matters in this movie. So I thought the acting was fairly good. Brad Pitt was probably one of the weaker parts of it. I thought, the main three looked good. They were in great shape. I thought it was fun to see Peter O'Toole in there. It was fun to see this cast that was stacked from top to bottom. I mean, there wasn't a lot of roles that went unfilled by known actors. Let's put it that way. So I also thought it was visually beautiful. The story, I think, gutting it of all the mythos kind of ruined it. Not explaining Julie Christie at the very beginning, kind of disappointing for me. But overall, I thought this movie was enjoyable, and it fits into the pantheon of the Sword and Sandals epics. Perhaps not as well as other movies, but definitely does fit in that group of movies fairly well. So I'm going to give it a 2.9. I'm going to give it a happy buzz, almost an Uber lifting home. You're almost there, but you're not quite there. You still got a little control over yourself. Ed?
So when I chose Troy, it's a movie that I remember being so happy that it was coming out. I remember the idea of like Achilles and the idea of Brad Pitt's playing it, and the whole cast was from A to Z, and I was stoked about it. I remember in 2004, I was just like, and I think even for a while, I was like, okay, this is a movie worth buying. So I do think it's aged a little bit, but not like horribly, but it has aged. I think what everyone was saying, the setting of the movie was spectacular. It was beautiful. And, the idea of Troy, I didn't know much about Troy before this. I just knew about the Trojans and stuff. So I like the idea of history with this was being told. I love the idea of Achilles being made into a human form. But then I see what Sean was saying is like, well, then why bring up the mom? And but it brought a different style of God into a human in this movie. And I do like the fighting scene between Eric Bana and I call him the Hulk against Ocean's 11.
Oh my God, that's why he was in the Hulk. Sorry, go ahead.
He was. So that scene was probably like the scene, and on top of Peter O'Toole and Brad Pitt, like those scenes were just. I remember when I watched this movie recently, I saw that scene. I was like, this is why I watched the movie for. I wanted to see this scene in particular. So I remember scenes of this movie, and I felt like there was a lot of fluff. Personally, this is just a little bit worse than the average movie in my eyes. It's a movie that I probably happy that I saw again, but I mean, it's one of those ones where it's like, okay, like it had to be done. I don't think you could do Achilles in many different other fashions. I think it was done pretty good. And I'll be interested if somebody ever tries to remake this movie. So I give it a 2.61. This is just below, right between a happy buzz and an Uber lifting home, a 2.61. I know Jeremiah likes that score, so it makes it unique.
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and give it to Brandon Homer.
Homer, yes. So listen, Fun fact about me that I don't know if many of you guys know is that I absolutely love and have always loved sword movies and sword stories. I think that they're some of my favorite films.
You have swords in your house.
I do. I collected. I don't do it anymore because I got little kids, but I collected swords. Any type of movie that had a sword coming out from when I was about 10 years old on. I was so excited. So I remember 2003 seeing the trailer for it, and it was coming right off of the Lord of the Rings, and I was all on, just this jacked up high. Mm-hmm. And Sean, that to me was a series of films that took a fantastical, almost mythological take on a sword and sandals kind of epic, and did it right. And I remember I'm like, oh, okay, so I've got this high going on from Lord of the Rings, and I remember sitting there 20 years ago in the theater and just watching it going, damn, they missed the mark. They really just missed the mark. I wanted to like it, and I just didn't like it. It didn't hit there. And so, to be fair, I haven't seen this movie for 20 years. And so, sitting down in 2024 and watching this movie again, I said, maybe I remembered it wrong. Maybe it's gotten better. Maybe as an adult, I can kind of come to it a little bit more a different perspective. And it didn't. And it did one thing that a movie can never do, especially a movie like this, is it bored me. And that right there was the sign of me just saying, fluff. Ooh, it's fluff. It's not engaging. Like the action scenes, they're great. The cinematographically, Sean, you're right. It's beautifully shot. CGI is done really well with the ships coming in. It's a movie that should work on every single level, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't ever connect. I think it's because really, and Sean, I'll agree with you, even if this tarnishes two of my favorites, is it was poorly cast. I think it was also poorly directed. And when I say directed, I mean directed from director to actors. And so for me, this is a movie that is just a heaping pile of disappointment. And that right there is I wish I hated it. But I don't. I just feel disappointed in it, and so for that, I'm probably harsher on what it should be, but it's because I had such high hopes, and literally, unlike a Panic at the Disco song, it just didn't hit. And so I'm almost having a rough morning. I'm giving a 3.88. I'm giving a 3.88, and wishing that I could give this in the points, the 0 points or the 1 points, but I just can't. It's a 3.88. Jeremiah, save our souls, I guess. I don't know.
Honestly, guys, I believe this movie does not get the fair chance. I think it gets lost in the shuffle, yo. I mean, this movie came after Gladiator, Braveheart, The Lord of the Rings, and
Patriot.
300 and pre Game of Thrones. So I think this movie took on more than it could, and it should have been a series. This was dying to be a series, and like Game of Thrones. Watching it over again, it's not that bad of a movie, man. I think it has a second life to it, and I think people will look at it years from now that have that Blade Runner, like, wow, when we were watching in the past, we thought it was shit. You watch it, you kind of have that respect to it, If it has like the right director and the right visionary, you can do something really special with this. Right. I keep saying Game of Thrones because it's kind of has that Game of Thrones vibe, and if it's done correctly and if it's done like tastefully, you got something here that can last for like 5 or 7 years and shit, Yeah. But we watch this movie, man. It's not that bad as you think it is, There's some good parts of it, and I think it's going to stand there for a little while. So, mine is just my score is a happy buzz with a shot. It's a 2.5. It wasn't that bad of a movie. I actually liked it more this time around than I watched it, before, back 20 years ago. But that's because I thought I was going to get Gladiator 2 or, continuing with Lord of the Rings or, Braveheart 2, It is what it is.
It kind of reminds me of the second tier of the Braveheart movies, like Master and Commander, Far Side of the World, or what is it, Enemy at the Gates, was a poor man's
Saving Private Ryan.
Private Ryan. It kind of, I would even say Robin Hood with Russell Crowe fits into that same category of you just didn't quite.
Not Robin Hood with
Kevin Costner.
That'll always be a classic for me with Kevin Costner.
That's the Robin Hood. This one to be known, right?
Actually, I think the Robin Hood is with Errol Flynn, but
no, it is with Carrie Elwes.
Most of us.
Of course he did.
Men in Tights.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it does. And he has an English accent.
Anyway, for part of the film. All right, when you take our scores and divide by 4, what does Troy get an average rating of?
It gives us a 2.9725.
It's got to be an original score, thanks to Eddie.
2.9725. And Jeremiah, where does that put Troy on our list of movies that we have reviewed?
Let me guess. Saving Private Ryan is better than it.
Yeah, you're kind of
Big
right.
Lebowski's below it.
So, you're absolutely right about that. It's our number 64th pick.
Okay.
Okay.
That's right where I think it should be.
It's our number 64 selection.
So what is better than Troy?
Vanilla Sky, Dracula, the original 1931, Beetlejuice, Knight's Tale, Terminator, Rocky.
Yep.
Moulin
Vanilla
Rouge.
Sky is better
Terminator?
than
Okay. What is worse?
Vanilla Sky.
What is worse than Troy?
300, V for Vendetta, The Ring, Tron Legacy. This is 40. Yeah.
Sean, say it, Sean. Give it to us.
That's where it's supposed to be on the
Yeah,
list.
it's right below a 3. So I was like, yeah.
It's so funny to me. It's like the next, right next to it, it's 300. I mean, I don't know how you put it right there, but it's right there, guys.
Well, I
There
mean,
you have
I hated 300, and I actually enjoyed Troy.
I love
so.
300. It makes me sad seeing that there, but whatever.
All right, so listen, we've got to have a little bit of a public service announcement right now. For those of you guys who don't know, Sean just celebrated a very special birthday. And so, Sean, we want to just give you a quick round of gentleman applause. Happy birthday, buddy.
Happy 29 years old,
that
buddy.
being said,
you look great.
If you've been following season 5 here, you know that the next pick should be Jeremiah, but Jeremiah is the nicest person in the world. And we all know what's coming here because we know our very, very good host, Sean. Jeremiah has opted to switch one time only, and I'm going to fucking make sure that you hold to that one time only. A one time only switch with Sean.
Only because I love you,
and
Sean.
we love Sean. Jeremiah loves Sean a little bit more than I do right now. And he has switcch with Sean so that Sean can use Sean who? Give me the name of the man.
Rules.
Give me the man.
Here's the reality.
Oh, here it is.
Traded him
never going.
Kevin
Yeah, he traded me a Ken Griffey Jr. rookie
For a pack
card
of
for
gum.
nothing.
Bazooka.
And
Hard
I thank you
bazooka
for
gum.
that. So-
That's what you got.
Yeah, but here's the thing: I would never have been able to fit in. Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole comes in so often, or so in often, and Lawrence of Arabia is such a hard movie to get to because basically he's the only actor in it, besides like Omar Sharif and Alec Guinness. But thank you, Jeremiah, for giving me this pick, and I'm going to use Peter O'Toole and get to my favorite movie of all time, which is Lawrence of Arabia. Now, with that disclaimer.
How do we get the hell out of that movie?
I will say this. I know that it's long. I know that it's slow, but it is cinematographically one of the greatest movies ever made. And there is a reason that it's on AFI's list where it is. So I would just approach it with an open mind. You don't have to like it.
We
You can
had
shit all over it.
Lord of
I
the
don't care.
Rings set up
But this
with Orlando
movie-
Bloom. You had any Brian Cox movie set up.
Or Sean Bean. Sean Bean.
Fuck, you could add a twofer. You could add a twofer. But instead we're doing Lawrence. So Larry, let's go.
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Hey, listen. This
yeah.
is the movie that inspired John Williams, Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Brian De Palma. This is the movie that if you don't have this movie, from my understanding,
And let me say, of the hosts, who's actually seen this movie?
I've never seen
I've
this.
never seen it.
Right.
I'm coming at this one new.
I've never seen
So
it.
we've got three of the 4 hosts who have not seen the movie.
So I'm trying to, Jeremy. You're picking Nets, right? So
Yeah.
I'm
I
excited.
already, I
Jeremy
already
has
have an
the-
idea.
Unhappy task of bringing us back into the 20th century somehow
Has to be
from
Alec.
Lawrence of Arabia.
Has to be Alec again.
And so he's got a couple of
Nope.
options. He's got some music options, a director option.
One of my personal favorite composers did this movie, so I'm pretty excited.
Interesting. I'm going to go through IMDb and check the composition.
And the music is fucking phenomenal. So it's one of the greatest scores of all time. All right. So if you enjoyed our review or are a fan of the podcast, we ask you please subscribe wherever you're listening. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. You can find us on Instagram at @the.gentlemanpodcast.com or at the .gentleman podcast.
The dot in the
You
right
can visit
spot
our
means a
website.
Really
You can
good
visit
one.
our website at thegentlemanpodcast.com, and we'd love to hear from you at hosts with an SHOSTS at thegentlemanpodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we really appreciate you continue to listen. Tell your friends, your family, and thank you so much for all your support. And with that, cheers, gentlemen. We'll see you next week for Lawrence of Arabia.